Okay, so are we happier about the Sam Darnold experience or that Nebraska is finally in Big Ten play where your message board people can get their fears confirmed or denied?
Well, I didn't think Nebraska was going to struggle much with its non-conference, so I think I'd probably be a little bit more surprised, happier by the fact that Sam Darnold is actually capable. And the Vikings have a good roster. They just needed someone who could drive the car, and he's doing a pretty good job. Though that interception to Fred Warner was, I don't know where that ball was going, and I don't know how many Niners were going to have the opportunity to pick it off, but Fred Warner did. But otherwise, Sam Darnold's he's been good. Ravi probably feels like that's a bad loss. He shouldn't though. That Vikings defense is legit. Brian Flores is legit. They're going to bully a bunch of teams this year. I think the NFC North is wide open. The NFC is bad, so that helps. But I think
listen to
that's
this.
more surprising.
Mike Schaefer sounding like Damon Benning on the Minnesota Vikings this offseason. Ravi one time looked at me, Schaefer, and he goes, "Oh, you have a weird affinity for the Minnesota Vikings.
You do.
Like, do you like the Vikings?"
You do.
And I said, "No,
you do.
I don't. I just think they're going to be good because I like Brian Flores, and I'm curious to see Darnold with a competent offensive mind."
Is this a Harrison Phillips thing?
By the way, congrats on the new 2-year deal.
Get that money.
Yeah.
No, actually, Schaefer, I don't think it's a bad loss. I do think Minnesota's not bad. I also think Sam Darnold is more capable than most people do.
I do have what did you ask me about the man crushes? Like, I have a blind spot for Fred Warner. So, when you said Fred Warner, I kind of gushed a little bit, Schaefer, and I felt a little conflicted because I don't know that
you need to have a blind spot about the.
Well, I don't like the 49ers. It's not my team. Like, I don't care one iota about the Niners, but I do really, really, really like Warner.
I think San Francisco can literally lose.
Who's that?
Bo Pelini. Nebraska wanted him bad.
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah.
And I think I might still be Facebook friends with Fred Warner. That was the way that I was able to get in touch with him at that time.
What high schooler is Facebooking like that? Back then,
it was
a weird time.
Back then,
it was a weird time.
Nobody is now. It's completely different now. But yeah, at that time, I couldn't get him on the phone, so I took a shot on Facebook. And that's how Fred Warner and I became Facebook friends.
You want to hear like a really weird Facebook college football story, Schaefer? Probably not, but I'm going to tell you anyway. So back in the day when Facebook first came out, so like 2005, 2006, when I first got on there and I was in college, there were major college football stars on Facebook because they didn't it was a new thing for everybody and they didn't really realize it's like, hey, I'm famous. I probably shouldn't be on here. So I went and friended a bunch of random quarterbacks.
Wow, shocker.
Because I liked him as recruits coming out of high school. And so I was friends with Mitch Mustaine and people like that on Facebook.
Wow.
I love it.
I wouldn't even tell anybody that. By the way, Schaefer, do you know why he chose BYU?
I really don't.
They were the first offer, weren't they?
They came in really hard at him. I don't even know. I don't think he's Mormon either. He was from
San Marcos.
I think
he wanted to go USC. They came in late, I thought.
Right. I know Nebraska really, really thought highly of him, and they were early, but BYU was, I think, first. And I don't know if it was a Bronco Mendenhall thing, because I think he would have been coaching there at that point. So, but yeah, I don't think he ever took an official visit to Nebraska. I know that they talked with him a lot, but I don't know that they were ever able to get him on campus.
Let me ask you something before we get to post UNI, Illinois, Nebraska talk. Is the Big Ten game you're most excited about Minnesota, Iowa, or USC and Michigan? Which one will tell you more, in your opinion? Just based on Mike J. Schaefer's thoughts.
I think I'm more interested in USC, Michigan, largely because I sort of expect Michigan to get slapped. And I think that's a little surprising because all the conversation was how USC was going to need to adjust to the Big Ten. And maybe that'll be the case, but I don't what I've seen from Michigan and what I've seen from USC, I think USC is going to hold up just fine against one of the worst offenses in the conference this year.
The line stinks, though. Like, I don't know how Michigan is going to score 5.5, let alone have that be the line. I wouldn't touch that thing with Ravi's $20 he owes me. If I was gun to head, man, I'd take Michigan.
I can't go that far.
I know, right? It makes no sense. I still don't. But I did look at. So I went back, Schaefer. I don't even know how we got on this, except you said SC Michigan. Miller Moss. I almost said Riley Moss. Miller Moss is. Do you know he only has 2 touchdown passes?
I think one each game, right?
Yeah, he hasn't been great. Mm-hmm. But he has been good enough to do what they need to do. They found a way to run the ball. They've turned teams over a little bit, but they haven't been like, I think at first blush, he hasn't been like I think you'd think 2-0, ran roughshod over LSU and Utah State. Moss has been. Like if you get inside the numbers.
Yeah, well, that Utah State game, I mean, they were in control of that. That's sort of like Nebraska, UTEP, and Nebraska, Northern Iowa, where they were just sort of in control in a very fast way in that game, and they didn't just like load up passing wise. I thought the LSU USC game was fascinating because I wasn't expecting USC to be more physical at times than LSU, and they were. And then you watch LSU South Carolina turn into a little bit of a track meet. And it's like, is USC's defense good? Is that a week 1 thing? So, I mean, we're going to learn quite a bit about this USC team against Michigan. But I just think Michigan's offense is so bad that I don't see how they can, if USC just gets to 20, 21 points, I don't think Michigan can get to that.
Maybe committing to Orgy full time now will give them some continuity, but I mean, against Utah State, people forget, man, SC ran the ball like 38 times.
It's like they've changed their identity a little bit overnight.
I like Woody Marks. Like, he's pretty good.
I mean, we'll find out. The problem here is the other option you gave me was Iowa, Minnesota, and I kind of swore off Minnesota. Like, I don't need to watch them the rest of the year. I watched them against North Carolina. They look exactly like they did in previous years. They're not interesting. They don't have any compelling player on offense that you're like, oh, I want to watch this guy. So, and then you combine that with Iowa, which every game of theirs is roughly the same. I just, outside of like the Schadenfreude, I don't know what the reason to watch Iowa, Minnesota this weekend.
Schaefer, would there be anything more surprising in Big Ten play this year than if USC really is this physical defensive football team?
I think the only thing that could be more surprising is if Indiana is really this good. Oh. That's probably the only other storyline that would be on the table. Otherwise, I mean, I think the conference has kind of played out how I anticipated. Oregon's looked a little worse than maybe I expected, but we'll see.
I don't know if Minnesota or if Michigan State goes to Boston College and wins, that will get my attention. Jonathan Smith is a good coach, and I think I joke with Ravi before the season started. I think we forgot that Jonathan Smith was hired at East Lansing. I was joking with him at Big Ten Media Days. I was like, "Oh, look, there's the guy that nobody knows whose team he's coaching, and he's a really good coach."
Well, they're one of the few teams I have not watched a single second of Michigan State this year, so I can't even really comment on how they've looked or how they played because it's just the way that it's lined up. I haven't watched any Michigan State, so I don't know what they exactly look like. I know that everybody likes their quarterback, but I thought he started kind of slow, just the way that he's been talked about.
I want to say Childs every time I see his name.
That's the same thing.
Every time I just want to be like Childs.
I would not pronounce that correctly.
The only reason I know is because Ben McLaughlin, somehow we got on Michigan State a couple weeks ago, and he said it correctly. So I'm like, I'm going with Benny Mack because I can barely get through a broadcast unless he's pointing or telling me what to do.
those Those broadcast guys, they're good at the pronunciation.
It's a high level of trust, right?
Yeah.
Cootie and BMAC make me look like I know what I'm talking about.
Schaefer,
That's good.
is there what's your level of, I guess, concern for the Illinois game opener against Nebraska? Like where, or maybe concern's not even the right word. How are you processing this game in the lead up?
I mean, I think this game is going to be a good test for Nebraska to kind of kick off Big Ten play. I don't see anything that's particularly threatening about Illinois, but it feels like they're competent enough in everything they do. They have good special teams. I mean, they have two kickers that are probably, and I don't say this to offend Tristan Alvano, but they have two kickers right now that I think Nebraska's fan base would take if they were offered that choice, either one of those guys. I mean, their backup kicker made a 59-yard field goal last week. That's sort of where they're at. Their special teams are fantastic. I wonder how well they can move the ball if they can't run it, because they've had struggles running the ball all year. I think Nebraska is a tough team to play if they can make you really one-dimensional. I want to see if Tommy Hill just follows Patrick Bryant everywhere. I mean, that would be a really fun.
They got a good tandem outside the numbers, don't they?
Yeah. So I mean, that's their guy. And at one point, he had caught every pass thrown to him this season, and so that ended during the Central Michigan game. But Patrick Bryant's been really good. So it made me wonder whether would Tony White have Tommy Hill just trail him? I don't know that Nebraska's defense is set up that way necessarily. But that matchup is going to be interesting, because if you can take Patrick Bryant out of the game, like if Tommy Hill is that good, or if Nebraska's secondary is that good, and you can make Patrick Bryant a non-factor, I just don't know that there's enough weapons for Illinois for them to put up enough points. Now, Nebraska hasn't faced probably a team that has this level of defense either. So what is Nebraska's offense going to do? I just think there's a lot of fun kind of chess matches inside this game. And we'll see if Nebraska is truly bully ball, if they're able to just build a lead and then sit on top of Illinois throughout the game, because Illinois is going to get one-dimensional and you're not going to have to worry about the run game. I think that plays into Nebraska's favor. I think they have a very clear path as to how Nebraska would want to play this game. You get an early lead, and then you just sit on top of them, and you power away at the Illinois defensive line, which is not nearly as good as it's been in the past.
Although I do think
have a good day running.
I do think Dennis Briggs Jr. is a pretty good player. He'll be wearing number 6 for those of you that are interested. Schaefer, let me ask you something here, because you said, well, I mean, not to take a shot at Tristan Alvano. When Nebraska was driving at the end of the half, and it was like the 4th and 3, and then they took the timeout, where did you think Nebraska needed to be in order to attempt the field goal? Or do you think that was, especially based on Coach Rule's presser, where he said, you know what, it's 4th and 3, and we got to be in those situations? And I said, yeah, Dylan, make a play, where that was going to be on the frontal lobe the whole time? Do you think that was...
I don't know that they were ever going to kick a field goal in that situation unless there was 2 seconds left and, you're just trying to grab the points there. It felt like, and this is just me, I don't know that Rule said it like this. This is just me adding my own sort of thoughts onto what happened. It felt like in the aftermath of it, a lot of it was, hey, we might be in this situation. So let's put Dylan in it and let's see how this goes. And so it felt like a learning rep, I guess, if you will. And it didn't obviously work for Nebraska, but it didn't feel to me that there was a whole lot of consideration of kicking a field goal there. Now, whether that's a confidence thing or whether that's, you've got this quarterback who hasn't been in a lot of situations. I mean, that's kind of the thing. Every week is a new week for everybody, but for Dylan Raiola, there's a lot that he's never done in college football. So picking up this 4th down to sustain the drive to try to go get points, I mean, you're going to need that at some point during the year. So keeping him out there and letting him do it, against Northern Iowa in a game in which you're in control sort of makes sense to me. And so, like I said, I might just be adding my own thoughts onto that, but I don't know that there was a lot of consideration to kick a field goal there.
Schaefer, how much of the first 3 games do you think Rule has been doing stuff like that? Like, let's assume you're right in that situation.
A lot.
Right? Yeah, like that's kind of my conclusion
He's
too.
playing the long game for sure.
I don't think he's like, I've said this on other shows. I've said it on our podcast. I've gotten the feeling since halfway through the second half of the Colorado game, they do not care about style points. It is not of interest to Matt Rule. And it's a very NFL mentality. It's build a lead, figure out how to maintain that lead, make sure guys leave the game, not injured. Don't put anybody in any bad situations. Play some guys, try to maximize your roster, pick your spots. And that's what they've done. People might just have to accept that Nebraska is not interested in winning a game 56-0 if it can, or 56-3, which it might have been able to do against Northern Iowa, as much as they're interested in, let's get some guys some reps. Let's see what we have throughout this roster. We might need this player in a situation later. This is a great opportunity for Carter Nelson to work on some of the stuff that he can do. I mean, I thought it was notable on that first drive. It was a lot of Carter Nelson, and then he was just kind of out of the game for a while. And then he came back in. I mean, they're kind of piecemealing this to see what they have. I like it. I think this is how you build your roster out. I think it's how you keep some guys happy. And I think it's how you can kind of build your program. They're not in it to go win this massive score and make people, freak out about, oh wow, they put up 70 points. I don't think Matt Rule cares about that. It's a very NFL mentality to me.
That's Mike J. Schaefer, Husker 24/7. Schaefer, enjoy your time in Columbus. Tell your mom happy birthday.
I will do that. I appreciate it, guys. Thanks for working with me today.
You got it, Schaefer.
We'll be back with more Hurrdat Sports Radio.